The handcuffs clicked shut around Marcus Washington's wrists as he knelt on his own freshly mowed lawn, 3 officers pressing him into the earth while his 8-year-old daughter watched from the window. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a man who'd seen too much injustice. Officer Bradley sneered, "Save it for the judge, criminal." But as the sergeant's radio crackled with an urgent message from dispatch, the color drained from every officer's face. They were about to learn that the dangerous suspect they'd just arrested wasn't just an innocent man, he was the one person in this city they should have recognized. The truth would shatter everything they thought they knew about power, justice, and the consequences of The sprinklers had just finished their evening cycle when Marcus Washington stepped onto his front porch, coffee mug in hand, to survey the work he'd done on his garden. The roses were blooming beautifully this year, their deep crimson petals catching the golden light of the setting sun. After 16 years of living in this house, the first home he'd ever owned, he still felt a quiet pride every time he looked at the manicured lawn, the perfectly trimmed hedges, the children's swing set he'd installed himself. "Daddy, can I go ride my bike?" 8-year-old Zoe appeared at his side, her natural hair pulled back in 2 neat puffs, school backpack still slung over her shoulder. "After homework, sweetheart. You know the rules." Marcus ruffled her hair gently. "Besides, it's almost dark." "But it's Friday. Homework first, then maybe we can watch a movie together." "Deal." Zoe's face lit up. "The one with the princess who saves the kingdom? If that's what you want." Marcus smiled, the kind of tired but genuine smile that came after a long week of 12-hour days. As the head of the city's Department of Internal Affairs, he'd spent the past month investigating a series of complaints about excessive force in the police department. The work was exhausting, politically sensitive, and often thankless. But it was necessary. The sound of car doors slamming made him look up. 3 police cruisers had pulled up in front of his house, their engines still running. Marcus felt his chest tighten as 6 officers emerged, hands already resting on their weapons. "Zoe, go inside," he said quietly, setting down his coffee mug. "But Daddy, now." The lead officer, a stocky man with close-cropped brown hair and cold blue eyes, approached with deliberate steps. His nameplate read, Bradley. Marcus recognized him immediately, Sergeant Tim Bradley, one of the officers currently under investigation for using excessive force during a routine traffic stop. "Marcus Washington." Bradley's voice carried a note of satisfaction that made Marcus's skin crawl. "That's me." "Is there a problem, Sergeant?" "You're under arrest for aggravated assault and resisting arrest." Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. Turn around, hands behind your back. There's obviously been some mistake. I just got home from work 20 minutes ago. I haven't been anywhere near. Turn around. Now." The other officers had spread out in a semicircle, their body language tense and ready. Marcus noticed Officer Davies, a rookie he'd seen around the station, looking uncomfortable. The kid kept glancing between Marcus and Bradley as if something didn't sit right with him. "I'm going to need to see a warrant," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Bradley's hand moved to his holster. "I said turn around. I'm not resisting. I'm asking for my rights." "You lost your rights the moment you decided to assault an officer." Marcus stared at him. "When did I allegedly assault an officer?" 3 hours ago. Corner of 5th and Main. You want to keep playing games, or are you going to cooperate? 3 hours ago I was in a meeting with the city attorney. There are 12 witnesses who can verify. Shut up and turn around. Bradley's voice had risen to a shout. A neighbor across the street had come out to watch. Mrs. Chen from next door was standing in her doorway, cell phone in hand. Marcus could see Zoe's face pressed against the living room window, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm cooperating," Marcus said, slowly turning around. "But I'm telling you, there's been a mistake." The handcuffs were cold against his wrists, clicking shut with mechanical precision. As Bradley pushed him forward, Marcus caught sight of Davies's face. The young officer looked like he wanted to say something, but Bradley's stern glare silenced him. You have the right to remain silent, Bradley began, his voice dripping with mock formality. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I know my rights, Marcus said. I also know that you're required to inform me of the specific charges, and I told you to shut up. Bradley's hand pressed against the back of Marcus's neck, forcing him down toward the patrol car. The gesture was unnecessary and deliberately humiliating. Marcus had been compliant from the beginning, but Bradley seemed intent on making a show of it. Sergeant Bradley, Davies spoke up hesitantly. Maybe we should double-check the "did I ask for your opinion," Davies. No, sir, but then keep your mouth shut and do your job. As they reached the patrol car, Marcus turned his head slightly to look at his house. Zoe was still at the window, and he could see tears streaming down her face. His heart broke. She'd already lived through too much: her mother's death in a car accident 2 years ago, the months of grief counseling, the slow process of rebuilding their life together. Now this. Please, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. My daughter is watching. She's 8 years old. She lost her mother, and now she's seeing her father arrested. Can you at least tell me what this is really about? Bradley's grip tightened on his arm. What it's about is justice. You people think you can do whatever you want, but there are consequences. You people don't play dumb. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Are you saying this is about race? I'm saying this is about a criminal who thought he could assault a police officer and get away with it. I'm the head of internal affairs. I haven't assaulted anyone. Bradley's laugh was harsh and bitter. Internal affairs? That's rich. You're the one who's been trying to crucify honest cops for doing their jobs. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. This was retaliation. Marcus had been investigating Bradley and his unit for months, gathering evidence of their pattern of excessive force, their tendency to target minority communities, their culture of protecting each other at the expense of justice. This is about the Morrison case, Marcus said. You're trying to intimidate me. I don't know what you're talking about. James Morrison. 19 years old. You broke 3 of his ribs during a traffic stop for a broken taillight. I have the hospital records, the witness statements, the dashcam footage you tried to suppress. Bradley's face flushed red. That punk was resisting arrest. He was reaching for his registration like you told him to. He was reaching for a weapon. It was his wallet, and you know it. The other officers had gone silent, watching the exchange with growing unease. Davies looked like he might be sick. Even the older officers seemed uncomfortable with the direction this was heading. Get him in the car, Bradley barked. As Marcus was pushed into the backseat, he caught sight of Mrs. Chen still filming from her doorway. Good. Whatever happened next, there would be a record. He'd learned long ago that in situations like this, witnesses were the only protection an innocent person had. The car door slammed shut, and Marcus found himself alone in the backseat, the mesh barrier separating him from the officers in front. Through the window, he could see Bradley talking animatedly to the other officers, his gestures sharp and aggressive. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to center himself. He'd been in worse situations before. During his time as a federal investigator, he'd gone undercover in some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country, infiltrating criminal organizations that wouldn't hesitate to kill him if they discovered his true identity. He'd testified against corrupt officials who had the power to make his life very difficult. He'd survived threats, intimidation, and attempts to discredit him, but this felt different. This was personal. This was Bradley using the power of his badge to settle a score, to send a message that no one, not even the head of internal affairs, was untouchable. The driver's door opened, and Bradley slid behind the wheel. Officer Davies got in the passenger seat, still looking uncomfortable. As they pulled away from the curb, Marcus turned to look back at his house. Zoe was no longer at the window, but he could see the porch light he'd left on, the coffee mug he'd abandoned, the normal life that had been shattered in the span of 20 minutes. So where exactly did this alleged assault take place? Marcus asked. Bradley's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. 5th and Main. Like I said. That's 3 blocks from the police station. So? So there are security cameras on every corner. Traffic cameras. The bank has exterior surveillance. The courthouse has cameras covering the entire intersection. Bradley's jaw tightened. What's your point? My point is that when we review the footage, it's going to show that I was nowhere near that intersection at the time you claim I assaulted an officer. Maybe the cameras were malfunctioning. All of them. At the same time. Davies shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sergeant, maybe you should shut up and drive. Marcus leaned back against. 3 days after his death, Marcus Washington stood in front of a cracked mirror in a rundown motel room, barely recognizing himself. The FBI's transformation team had done their work with surgical precision. His hair was now jet black instead of graying at the temples, styled in a way that suggested prison barbershops rather than professional salons. A carefully crafted scar ran from his left ear to his jaw, the result of what his fabricated record claimed was a knife fight in federal prison. Contact lenses had changed his warm brown eyes to a cold gray, and subtle dental work had given him a slight gap between his front teeth. But the most dramatic change wasn't physical, it was the way he carried himself. Gone was the measured confidence of a federal investigator. In its place was the wary alertness of a man who'd spent 5 years looking over his shoulder in prison, someone who'd learned to project just enough menace to avoid being seen as prey. Marcus Johnson had been born 3 months ago in FBI computers, but he'd existed in Marcus Washington's mind since the moment he'd agreed to this operation. Every gesture, every inflection, every detail of his manufactured past had been rehearsed. Until it became second nature. The burner phone on the nightstand buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize, coffee shop on 5th Street. 1 hour. Order the house special. Marcus, now Johnson, slipped the phone into his jacket pocket and checked his appearance one final time. The clothes were perfect, expensive enough to suggest he'd been successful before his incarceration, but not so flashy as to attract unwanted attention. A gold chain peeked out from beneath his collar, and his watch was the kind favored by men who made their money in cash. The walk to the coffee shop took him through the heart of the city he'd called home for 16 years, but everything looked different now. He found himself cataloging escape routes, identifying potential threats, moving with the controlled paranoia of someone who'd learned that survival depended on constant vigilance. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Carlos Vega would choose for a meeting, busy enough to provide cover, with multiple exits and clear sightlines to the street. Marcus ordered the house special and took a seat in the corner, his back to the wall, just as Marcus Johnson would have done. Carlos Vega arrived exactly on time, sliding into the booth across from him with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent years avoiding police attention. He was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe 35, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "You must be Johnson," Vega said, extending his hand. "I've heard good things about your work." Marcus shook it, allowing just enough firmness to suggest confidence without appearing aggressive. "Depends who's talking. Friends of friends. People who know value when they see it." They spoke in code for the first 10 minutes, each man probing the other's credentials, establishing trust through shared connections that existed only in FBI files. Marcus had memorized dozens of names, dates, and criminal enterprises, weaving them into a personal history that would stand up to casual scrutiny. "So you're looking for someone who can clean money," Vega said eventually, stirring his coffee with deliberate slowness. "I'm looking for partners who understand that cash is only valuable if you can spend it without drawing attention. And you can provide that service." Marcus leaned back, projecting the quiet confidence of someone who'd built a fortune on other people's secrets. "I can provide solutions. The question is whether you have problems worth solving." Vega smiled, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen from him. "We have problems. Big problems. The kind that require someone with your particular expertise." "Tell me about them." "Better if I show you. But first, you need to understand the ground rules. The people I work with, they don't forgive mistakes. They don't accept excuses. And they sure as hell don't tolerate betrayal." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I've been betrayed before. It's not something I'm interested in repeating." "Good. Because tomorrow night, you're going to meet some people who could make you very rich. Or very dead. Sometimes the difference is smaller than you'd think. As they left the coffee shop, Marcus felt the familiar thrill of a successful infiltration. He'd passed the first test, established his credibility, and earned an invitation into the inner circle. But as they walked down the street, he caught sight of a familiar figure in his peripheral vision. Detective Ryan Bradley was sitting in a parked car across the street, watching them with binoculars. Marcus forced himself to maintain his casual pace, resisting the urge to alert Vega to their surveillance. But his mind was racing. If Ryan Bradley was watching Carlos Vega, that meant the corrupt network was bigger than they'd realized. It meant that Bradley's nephew wasn't just feeding information to his uncle, he was actively participating in the criminal enterprise. That night, Marcus sat in his motel room and called Agent Chen using the encrypted phone she'd provided. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "Ryan Bradley was conducting surveillance on my meeting with Vega. He's not just an informant, he's an active participant." Agent Chen was quiet for a long moment. "That changes things. If Ryan Bradley is involved, he'll have access to federal databases, ongoing investigations, witness protection protocols. He could expose the entire operation. Or he could be our way in." "You said he was watching you in Vega?" "From across the street. Professional surveillance, not casual observation. Then he's reporting back to his uncle about new players in their organization." "That's actually perfect." Marcus frowned. "How is that perfect?" "Because it means they are going to run a background check on Marcus Johnson. And when they do, they are going to find exactly what we want them to find, a career criminal with the skills they need and the motivation to work with them. And if they dig deeper, the identity is bulletproof. We've been building it for months. Tax records, credit history, prison medical files, everything checks out. Even if they contact people from your supposed past, they'll talk to federal agents who've been briefed on your cover story." Marcus hung up and tried to sleep, but his mind kept returning to Zoe. Agent Chen had shown him surveillance footage of his daughter at the safe house, playing with other children, laughing with her temporary guardians, seemingly adjusting well to her new environment. But Marcus could see the sadness in her eyes, the way she kept checking the door as if hoping her father might walk through it. The next evening, Vega picked him up in a black sedan with tinted windows. They drove through the city in silence, taking a circuitous route that suggested either paranoia or professionalism. Marcus memorized every turn, every landmark, building a mental map that could prove crucial later. They pulled up to a warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of anonymous building that could house anything from legitimate businesses to criminal enterprises. Two men in expensive suits flanked the entrance, their bulges under their jackets suggesting they were armed. "Remember," Vega said as they got out of the car, "these people value respect above everything else. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. Don't ask questions unless they invite them. And whatever you do, don't lie. They have ways of checking everything." The warehouse interior had been converted into an office space that would have looked at home in any corporate headquarters. Expensive furniture, tasteful artwork, and the kind of lighting that suggested serious money. But Marcus noticed the security cameras in every corner, the reinforced windows, and the subtle modifications that turned the space into a fortress. Sergeant Tim Bradley was waiting for them in a conference room, but he wasn't alone. 3 other men sat around a polished table, their faces professionally neutral. Marcus recognized one of them from surveillance photos, Captain David Morrison, the head of the narcotics division and, according to FBI intelligence, the actual leader of the corrupt network. "Marcus Johnson," Bradley said, standing to shake his hand. "I've heard interesting things about your work. I do my best to satisfy clients. And your clients, they appreciate discretion. They appreciate results. Discretion is just part of the service." Bradley gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Please, sit. We have a proposition for you." For the next hour, Marcus listened as they outlined their operation with the casual professionalism of any business meeting. They controlled drug Distribution in 3 neighborhoods, protected by a network of corrupt officers who ensured that arrests were either avoided entirely or resulted in minimal sentences. They had judges on their payroll, prosecutors who looked the other way, and defense attorneys who encouraged plea bargains that kept dangerous witnesses off the stand. Our problem, Captain Morrison said, is that we are making more money than we can legitimately explain. We need someone who can help us clean our profits through legitimate businesses. I can do that, Marcus replied. But I'll need to understand the full scope of your operation. How much money are we talking about? Bradley smiled. Last month alone, we cleared $2 million. And that's just from 3 neighborhoods. We are looking to expand. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but internally he was amazed. The FBI had estimated their profits at maybe $500,000 annually. The reality was far worse than anyone had imagined. Expansion requires infrastructure, Marcus said. More legitimate businesses to serve as F. The first $50,000 came in duffel bags that reeked of marijuana and cocaine, bills still sticky with residue from hands that had never seen legitimate work. Marcus sat in the warehouse office at 2 a.m., methodically photographing each serial number with a camera hidden in his watch, while Captain Morrison and Bradley watched him work. Impressive system, Morrison said, observing as Marcus fed bills through a counting machine that had been modified to detect marked currency. Where'd you learn this? Prison, Marcus replied without looking up. Amazing what you can pick up when you have 5 years and nothing but time. It wasn't entirely a lie. Marcus had spent months studying money laundering techniques as part of his federal training, but Morrison didn't need to know that. The beauty of his cover story was that prison could explain almost any skill, any connection, any piece of knowledge that Marcus Johnson might possess. The beauty of this system, Marcus continued, sorting bills into different stacks, is that it's impossible to trace once the money enters the legitimate banking system. These bills will be deposited into accounts belonging to 17 different shell companies over the next 3 days. 17. Bradley asked. Any more than that and patterns start to emerge. Any fewer and individual deposits become large enough to trigger automatic reporting requirements. Marcus was actually explaining the FBI's own money laundering detection protocols, but describing them as if he were trying to circumvent them. Every word was being recorded by the device hidden in his belt buckle, building a case that would eventually put these men in federal prison for life. Morrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Bradley asked. The kind that walks and talks and remembers things it shouldn't. Marcus continued counting money, but every sense was alert. Morrison's tone suggested immediate danger, the kind that usually ended with someone disappearing permanently. Dr. Richardson? Bradley asked. She's been asking questions. Requesting copies of medical records for patients treated by her department. Over the past year. Official requests, through proper channels. That's not good. It gets worse. She specifically requested records for any patients who suffered blunt force trauma consistent with police batons. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Dr. Richardson was conducting her own investigation into police brutality, probably motivated by what she'd seen happen to James Morrison. She had no idea that her curiosity was about to get her killed. When? Bradley asked. Tomorrow night. She works late on Fridays, usually alone in the ER until midnight. Simple robbery gone wrong. Wrong place, wrong time. Who's handling it? Martinez and Johnson. They'll make it look like a drug addict looking. 4 pills. She'll resist, things get violent, tragic accident. Marcus forced himself to maintain his poker face while internally calculating distances and timing. Dr. Richardson worked at City General Hospital, about 15 minutes from his current location. If they were planning to kill her tomorrow night, he had less than 18 hours to warn Agent Chen and set up protection. What about the lawyer? Marcus asked, keeping his voice casual. Mitchell, right? Morrison nodded approvingly. Good memory. She's next week. Car accident on her way home from court. Drunk driver runs a red light, boom. Very tragic, very random. And the kid? Tommy Nguyen. That one's trickier. 15 years old, lives with his grandmother in public housing. Can't make it look like an accident without raising questions. Bradley smiled coldly. Gang violence. Kid gets caught in the crossfire of a drug deal gone bad. Happens all the time in that neighborhood. Marcus felt sick. They were discussing the murder of a child with the same casual indifference they might show when planning a weekend barbecue. But he forced himself to nod as if he approved. Smart, he said. Multiple methods, different timelines. Harder to connect the dots. Exactly. The key is making sure each death looks completely unrelated to the others. Morrison's phone buzzed again. This time his expression darkened significantly. Shit. What now? Bradley asked. Internal Affairs is reopening the Washington investigation. Marcus's heart stopped. I thought you said he was dead. He is. But apparently they are reviewing all of his open cases, looking for anything he might have missed. They are bringing in federal investigators. Bradley stood up abruptly. That's impossible. The investigation died with him. Tell that to the FBI agents who showed up at the station this morning. The room fell silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. The FBI was supposed to wait until he'd gathered sufficient evidence before making any moves. If they were already investigating openly, it meant something had gone wrong. Who's leading the investigation? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Agent Sarah Chen. FBI Corruption Unit. She's got a reputation for being thorough. Marcus felt a moment of relief. Agent Chen was smart enough to know that showing up at the station would spook the corrupt officers, but she must have had a reason for making such an obvious move. What does she know? Bradley asked. Nothing yet. But she's asking for access to Washington's files, his computer, his case notes. If she finds the wrong things, then we make sure she doesn't find anything. Bradley said firmly. Same solution as always. You can't kill an FBI agent, Morrison said. That brings federal heat we can't handle. We can't let her destroy everything we've built either. Marcus saw his opportunity. There might be another way. Both men looked at him. What do you mean? Morrison asked. FBI agents are people. People have weaknesses. Family, financial problems, career ambitions. Instead of eliminating her, why not compromise her? How? Marcus leaned back, projecting the confidence of someone who'd solved similar problems before. I have contacts in federal prison. People who owe me favors. Agent Chen has been investigating corruption for years. That means she's made enemies. Dangerous enemies who would love to know where she lives, where her family lives. You're talking about intimidation. I'm talking about persuasion. Sometimes the threat of violence is more effective than violence itself. Morrison was nodding. Slowly. Interesting. But we'd need detailed information about her personal life. Leave that to me. Give me 48 hours and I'll have everything you need to make Agent Chen very cooperative. It was a desperate gambit, but Marcus needed time to contact Agent Chen and coordinate their next moves. If he could convince Morrison and Bradley that he was handling the FBI problem, it might buy him the breathing room he needed. What about the other three? Bradley asked. Do we proceed as planned? Absolutely. The lawyer and the kid can wait, but Dr. Richardson is asking too many questions. We handle her tomorrow night as scheduled. Marcus nodded as if he agreed, but his mind was racing through possibilities. He had to find a way to warn Dr. Richardson without blowing his cover. If he contacted Agent Chen directly, Morrison's people might be monitoring federal communications. If he tried to warn Dr. Richardson himself, he risked being seen by Martinez and Johnson. I should get going, Marcus said, standing up. I have calls to make about our FBI problem. Keep us informed, Morrison said. And Marcus. Good work tonight. You might just be exactly what we've been looking for. As Marcus left the warehouse, he felt the weight of multiple lives hanging in the balance. Dr. Richardson would be dead. In 18 hours unless he could find a way to protect her. Agent Chen was walking into a trap that could compromise the entire investigation. And somewhere in Virginia, Zoe was going to sleep another night without knowing if her father was alive or dead. The burner phone in his pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. One wrong call, one misplaced word, and everything would collapse. The corrupt officers would disappear, the evidence would be destroyed, and the innocent people they'd marked for death would die anyway. But as Marcus walked through the empty streets toward his motel, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of the hunt. He was no longer the prey being stalked by predators. He was the apex predator, moving unseen through their territory, gathering intelligence, preparing to strike. Bradley and Morrison thought they were untouchable. They thought their badges and their connections made them immune to justice. They thought that killing Marcus Washington had eliminated their biggest threat. Tomorrow night, they were going to learn how wrong they were. Marcus pulled out the burner phone and dialed a number he'd memorized but never called. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Emergency services. I need to report a planned robbery at City General Hospital, Marcus said, disguising his voice with the gravelly tone of someone who'd spent too many years smoking. Tomorrow night, around midnight. Armed suspects targeting the emergency room. Sir, I'm going to need more information, Marcus hung up. It wasn't much, but it would put extra security at the hospital, make Martinez and Johnson think twice about their timing. Every hour he could delay gave him more time to find a permanent solution. Back in his motel room, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his reflection in the dark window. The man looking back at him was a stranger, scarred, hardened, dangerous. But behind the grey contact lenses, behind the carefully constructed facade of Marcus Johnson, Marcus Washington was still there, still fighting. He thought about Zoe, The emergency call came at 11:47 p.m., just as Dr. Emily Richardson was finishing her notes on the last patient of her shift. Marcus listened to the scanner in his rental car from the hospital parking garage, watching as Martinez and Johnson sat in their unmarked police cruiser 3 levels below, waiting for the extra security to leave. His anonymous tip had worked, 2 additional guards had been stationed at the hospital since 6 p.m. But now, as the night wore on and no threat materialized, they were preparing to return to their normal patrol routes. Marcus checked his watch. 13 minutes until midnight. Agent Chen should be in position by now, along with the FBI tactical team hidden throughout the hospital. But Marcus hadn't been able to confirm their presence without risking his cover. He was operating on faith and timing, 2 things that could get people killed. His earpiece crackled with Morrison's voice, status report. Security is reducing. Target is still in the building. Martinez and Johnson are in position, Marcus replied, hating every word. Good. Make sure there are no complications. Understood. Marcus switched off the radio and moved closer to the stairwell. Through the concrete and steel, he could hear footsteps, Martinez and Johnson, finally making their move. He'd been watching them for 2 hours, memorizing their patrol patterns, waiting for this moment. The plan was simple in its brutality. They would enter through the emergency room loading dock, where Johnson had disabled the security camera earlier that day during a routine inspection. They would corner Dr. Richardson in the records room where she always worked late, demand drugs, and when she refused or tried to call for help, they would kill her and stage the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. Marcus descended the stairs. Silently, every sense alert. He'd done this kind of work before, moving through hostile territory, tracking dangerous targets, preparing to strike. But never when the targets were police officers, and never when failure meant an innocent woman would die. He reached the ground floor and peered through the stairwell window. Martinez was picking the lock on the loading dock door while Johnson stood watch. Both men were dressed in civilian clothes, both carrying untraceable weapons. They looked like exactly what they were pretending to be, desperate addicts looking for pharmaceutical drugs to steal and sell. Marcus's phone vibrated with a text, in position. Waiting for your signal. SC Agent Chen. The cavalry was here, but they needed Marcus to maintain his cover until the last possible moment. If Martinez and Johnson realized they were walking into a trap, they might escape and warn Morrison. The entire operation would collapse. The loading dock door opened with a soft click. Martinez and Johnson slipped inside, moving with the practiced efficiency of men who'd done this kind of work before. Marcus waited 30 seconds, then followed. The hospital corridors were dimly lit, emergency lighting casting long shadows. That provided perfect cover. Marcus could hear the distant sounds of the night shift, nurses checking on patients, doctors making rounds, the normal rhythms of a place where life and death decisions happened around the clock. Ahead of him, Martinez and Johnson moved toward the records room with purposeful steps. They knew exactly where they were going, exactly what they planned to do. Marcus followed at a distance, his hand resting on the concealed recording device. That had been documenting everything for the past 3 weeks. The records room was at the end of a long corridor, isolated from the main hospital traffic. Perfect for what Martinez and Johnson had planned. Perfect for what Marcus was about to do. Through the partially open door, Marcus could see Dr. Richardson at a desk, reviewing patient files by the light of a desk lamp. She was a small woman in her 40s, with graying hair and the kind of gentle competence that made patients trust her immediately. She had no idea that 2 men were approaching with the intention of killing her. Martinez reached the door first, Johnson closed behind. They paused for a moment, checking the corridor one final time, then pushed the door open. Dr. Richardson. Martinez's voice was artificially friendly. Police officers. We need to ask you a few questions. Through the crack in the door, Marcus could see Dr. Richardson look up with mild confusion. Officers. Is there some kind of emergency? You could say that, Johnson replied, stepping into the room and closing the door behind them. Marcus moved closer, knowing he had perhaps seconds before they revealed their true intentions. His earpiece was open, transmitting everything to Agent Chen and her team. I don't understand, Dr. Richardson was saying. What questions? And why aren't you in uniform? We are detectives, Martinez lied smoothly. We are investigating a drug theft ring that we believe involves hospital staff. Marcus could hear the change in Dr. Richardson's voice, confusion giving way to suspicion. I think I should call hospital security. I don't think so, Johnson said. That was the signal Marcus had been waiting for. The moment when their true intentions became clear, when Dr. Richardson realized she was in danger, when the pretense dropped and the murder attempt began. Marcus kicked open the door and stepped inside, his weapon drawn. FBI. Nobody move. For a split second, the room was frozen in tableau. Dr. Richardson behind her desk, eyes wide with shock. Martinez and Johnson turning toward the door, their own weapons half drawn. And Marcus Washington, no longer Marcus Johnson, no longer the compliant criminal they thought they could trust. You're supposed to be dead, Martinez breathed. So are a lot of people, Marcus replied. But unlike your other victims, I had backup. The corridor erupted with movement. Agent Chen and her tactical team poured through the door Marcus had left open, automatic weapons trained on Martinez and Johnson. Red laser dots danced across both officers' chests. Weapons down. Now. Agent Chen shouted. Martinez looked like he was considering resistance, his hand still moving toward his gun. Marcus shifted his aim slightly, putting the red dot from his laser sight directly between the corrupt officer's eyes. I wouldn't, Marcus said quietly. I've been looking forward to this conversation for 3 weeks. Both officers slowly raised their hands, their weapons clattering to the floor. Dr. Richardson sat motionless at her desk, trying to process what had just happened. Dr. Richardson, Agent Chen said gently, you're safe. These men were here to kill you, but we've been monitoring their activities. I don't understand, Dr. Richardson whispered. They are police officers. They were police officers, Marcus corrected. Now they are just criminals who happen to wear badges. Agent Chen began reading Martinez and Johnson their rights while the tactical team secured them with zip ties. Marcus kept his weapon trained on them, watching for any sign of resistance. These men had killed at least 6 people, they wouldn't hesitate to add more bodies to their count if given the opportunity. Marcus Washington, Johnson said, his voice filled with bitter understanding. You son of a bitch. This whole thing was a setup. From the beginning, Marcus confirmed. Every meeting, every conversation, every crime you planned in front of me. All recorded, all documented, all admissible in federal court. Martinez's face had gone pale. Morrison's going to kill you for this. Morrison's going to have bigger problems to worry about. Marcus's earpiece crackled with the voice of the FBI tactical commander. Warehouse raid is complete. All subjects in custody. No resistance. Agent Chen smiled grimly. Captain Morrison, Sergeant Bradley, Detective Ryan Bradley, and 4 other officers were arrested simultaneously. We have recordings of them planning multiple murders, financial records showing money laundering, and enough evidence to put them away for life. What about the other witnesses? Dr. Richardson asked. The people they were planning to kill. Safe, Agent Chen replied. Sarah Mitchell and Tommy Nguyen are both in protective custody. They'll be relocated with new identities. Once the trials are over. Marcus lowered his weapon as the tactical team led Martinez and Johnson away. The immediate threat was over, but he felt no sense of victory. Too many people had died before tonight. Too many families had been destroyed by the corruption he'd helped expose. There's something else, Agent Chen said, pulling out a tablet computer. We intercepted communications between Morrison's network and similar groups in 3 other cities. This wasn't just a local problem. Marcus looked at the screen, which showed a complex organizational chart linking corrupt police units across multiple states. Names, dates, financial transactions, a web of corruption that stretched far beyond anything they'd imagined. How big is this? He asked. We are estimating at least 60 officers across 4 states. Drug money, protection rackets, contract killings. Morrison's group was just one cell in a much larger organization. Dr. Richardson stood up on shaky legs. How long has this been going on? Based on the evidence Marcus gathered, at least 5 years. Maybe longer. Marcus thought about all the cases he'd investigated as head of internal affairs, all the complaints he'd dismissed as isolated incidents or personality conflicts. How many times had he missed the bigger picture? How many victims could have been saved if he'd recognized the pattern sooner? I need to see my daughter, Marcus said. Agent Chen nodded. The plane leaves in 2 hours. She's waiting for you. As they left the hospital, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in the glass doors. Marcus Johnson was gone, replaced by the SC. The FBI field office hummed with activity at 11:47 p.m., fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the maze of cubicles and conference rooms. Marcus sat in the same chair he'd occupied for the past 3 hours, watching Agent Chen organize evidence with the methodical precision of someone who'd built her career on bringing down corrupt law enforcement. Tell me about the Morrison case again, she said, sliding a fresh cup of coffee across the table. From the beginning. Marcus rubbed his temples, exhaustion settling into his bones. James Morrison was pulled over by Bradley's unit 6 months ago. Routine traffic stop, supposedly. Broken taillight. But the dashcam footage shows Morrison complying with every instruction. Bradley asked for his license and registration. Morrison reached for his glove compartment, slowly, hands visible, and Bradley lost it. Started screaming about him going for a weapon. Agent Chen pulled up a video file on her laptop and turned it toward Marcus. This footage. Marcus watched the familiar scene unfold. James Morrison, a slight 19-year-old with nervous eyes, carefully reaching into his glove compartment while Bradley and 2 other officers stood behind him, hands on their weapons. The audio was crystal clear. That's my registration, officer. Morrison's voice was respectful, scared. Get your hands up. Get them up now. I'm just getting the sound of Bradley's baton connecting with Morrison's ribs was sickening, even through the laptop speakers. Marcus had watched this footage dozens of times, but it never got easier. 3 broken ribs, Marcus said. Quietly. Bruised kidney. Concussion. And Bradley's report claimed Morrison was aggressively resisting arrest and reaching for a concealed weapon. But you proved otherwise. I proved that there was no weapon. That Morrison was following instructions. That Bradley's story was a fabrication designed to justify excessive force. Agent Chen paused the video. What you didn't know was that Morrison had been marked for elimination. Marcus looked up sharply. What do you mean? 3 days before the traffic stop, Morrison witnessed a drug deal go bad. He saw Bradley and Officer Martinez shaking down a dealer named Carlos Vega. When Vega couldn't pay their protection fee, they beat him unconscious and took his product. Morrison saw this. He was walking home from work. Took out his phone, started recording. Bradley spotted him, but Morrison ran. They couldn't catch him, but they got his license plate number. The pieces clicked into place. So the traffic stop wasn't random. It was an execution attempt disguised as a routine stop. They were going to claim Morrison pulled a gun, shoot him, and plant evidence. Your investigation saved his life. Marcus felt sick. How do you know all this? Agent Chen opened another file. Because Carlos Vega survived. He's been working with us for 2 months, wearing a wire, documenting everything. We have recordings of Bradley planning Morrison's murder. She pressed play on another audio file. Bradley's voice filled the room, tinny through the recording. Equipment but unmistakable. The kid's got to go. He's already talking to internal affairs, and if he testifies, we are all fucked. What about the investigator? This voice Marcus didn't recognize. Washington. He's just another bureaucrat. We'll handle him when the time comes. How? Same way we handled that reporter last year. Tragic accident. Wrong place, wrong time. Marcus's blood turned cold. What reporter? Agent Chen's expression darkened. Maria Santos. Investigative journalist with the Herald. She was looking into police corruption, focusing on unusually high arrest rates in minority neighborhoods. She died in a car accident 8 months ago. I remember that. Single vehicle collision, late at night. Except it wasn't an accident. We found evidence that her brake lines were cut. She'd been asking questions about Bradley's unit, requesting arrest records, interviewing witnesses. Marcus stood and began pacing. How many people have they killed? We are still investigating. But we've identified at least 4 suspicious deaths over the past 2 years. All people who posed a threat to their operation. The door opened and Captain Rodriguez entered with Davies behind him. The young officer looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. His uniform was wrinkled, his face pale with exhaustion and stress. Davies has been very helpful, Rodriguez said, taking a seat. Tell Mr. Washington what you told us. Davies cleared his throat nervously. I've been documenting everything for 8 months. Photos, recordings, written logs. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how deep it went. What made you suspicious? Marcus asked. The arrests. We'd roll up to a drug deal, and somehow the dealers always knew we were coming. They'd be gone, but they'd leave behind just enough drugs to make it look like we'd disrupted something. And the money. Davies shook his head. There was always money missing from the evidence bags. Agent Chen leaned forward. Show him the photographs. Davies pulled out his phone and scrolled through dozens of images. Marcus saw Bradley and other officers meeting with known drug dealers, exchanging briefcases, standing guard while transactions took place. I started following them on my days off, Davies continued. Using my own car, staying back. I documented 13 separate meetings over 6 weeks. Why didn't you report it? Davies's laugh was bitter. To who? Bradley's got connections throughout the department. His brother-in-law is a deputy chief. His nephew works in internal affairs. Wait. Marcus interrupted. Who's his nephew? Detective Ryan Bradley. He's been assigned to several of the cases involving excessive force complaints. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. Ryan Bradley is the one who's been providing me with case files. He's been my primary contact for evidence requests. Agent Chen and Rodriguez exchanged glances. Which means, Rodriguez said slowly, that Bradley has known about every aspect of your investigation from the beginning. He's been feeding information to his uncle, Davies added. I heard them talking about it. They knew about every witness you'd interviewed, every piece of evidence you'd collected. Marcus sat down heavily. So they've been one step ahead of me this entire time. Until tonight, Agent Chen said. Tonight, they made their move too early. They were supposed to wait until you were alone, make it look like a robbery gone wrong. But Bradley got impatient. He wanted to humiliate you first. And that's what saved your life, Rodriguez added. If they'd stuck to their original plan, we might not have been able to stop them. Marcus thought about Zoe, about how close he'd come to leaving her an orphan. The weight of what had almost happened pressed down on him like a physical force. What happens now? He asked. Agent Chen spread out a series of documents. Now we build a case that will put these men in federal prison for the rest of their lives. We have wire recordings, surveillance footage, financial records showing unexplained deposits into their accounts. But we need more. What kind of more? We need you to go undercover. Marcus stared at her. You want me to what? Bradley and his unit don't know we are onto them. As far as they are concerned, you're just another corrupt official they've eliminated. We want you to disappear for a while, let them think their plan worked. And then we are going to give you a new identity and send you in to document their operation from the inside. You'll be working with Carlos Vega, posing as a new player in their drug network. Marcus shook his head. I have a daughter. I can't just disappear. It would only be for a few weeks, Rodriguez said. And Zoe would be protected. We'd place her with a family in the witness protection program, just temporarily. Absolutely not. She's lost her mother. She's not losing her father too. Agent Chen leaned back in her chair. I understand your concern, but this is bigger than just you and your family. Bradley's network has been responsible for flooding this city with drugs for 3 years. They've killed innocent people, corrupted the justice system, and destroyed countless lives. And I'm supposed to risk making my daughter an orphan to stop them. You're supposed to help us make sure no other children lose their parents too. These men. The room fell silent. Marcus could hear the distant sound of phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the normal sounds of an investigation in progress. But all he could think about was Zoe's face at the window, watching her father being handcuffed in their front yard. Davy spoke up quietly. Mr. Washington, I know this is hard. But if we don't stop them, they'll just keep killing people. And eventually, they'll come for you and Zoe anyway. This is the only way to end it. Marcus looked around the room at the faces watching him. Rodriguez, a man he'd worked with for 5 years and trusted completely. Agent Chen, a federal investigator who'd clearly dedicated her career to bringing down corrupt cops. Davies, a young officer who'd risked everything to document the truth. What exactly would I have to do? Agent Chen pulled out a thick folder. We've created a cover identity for you. Marcus Johnson, recently released from federal prison, looking to get back into the drug trade. You'd be introduced to Bradley's network through Carlos Vega, who they trust. And my role would be money laundering. We know they are having trouble cleaning their profits. You'd offer to help them legitimize their earnings through a series of shell companies we've set up. Marcus studied the documents. The cover identity was thorough: false criminal record, fabricated prison discharge papers, even fake references from other crim